I mean, I think the advice like fail fast is the best advice I would give my like former self, because I think at the beginning I was always trying to make things work, make people work that weren't right, make a situation work because I'd said I was going to do it that wasn't right. And I think even 6 months, 8 months later, I still knew it wasn't right. And I thought things were going to sort themselves out, either with an employee that wasn't right and I'm just like, rip the band aid off. If it's not right now, it's not going to be right in 6 months. And you're going to waste time and you're going to waste money and you're going to waste resource. And our resources are so limited anyway. Just fail fast, rip the band aid off, move on. It's not a personal failure if it wasn't the right fit, if I hired the wrong person. It's just life. Same with if I make a mistake in business. It's like, it didn't work, fine, move on, get rid of it, stop. And I think I was embarrassed sort of before to be like, oh, maybe that wasn't the right idea. Now it's fine. We're all going to make mistakes.
Hello and welcome to Anatomy of a Leader show with me, Maria Vorostovsky. I'm the founder and CEO of HVO Search. Founders, CEOs, and lone HR directors hire me when they feel stuck and under pressure to hire the right senior leaders who will grow their companies. They work with me to ensure they don't hire the wrong person. I'm on a mission to discover what makes a great leader, the skills they have, what drives them, to really dissect what success looks like and what it takes to get to the very top. My aim is to bring to you leadership stories of entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs, investors, authors, leaders from all walks of life, the failures they faced, what they wish they knew before they started, and the hurdles they had to overcome. If you want to be inspired, surprised, and feel like you're not alone in your struggles towards the very top, you're in the right place here on Anatomy of a Leader. Like and comment below and subscribe to make sure you don't miss a single episode. It will change the way you think and may even change your life. In episode 8, I sat down to talk with a very elegant, passionately driven, and extremely attention to detail focused Whitney Hawkings. After spending 18 years working with Tom Ford at Gucci, Whitney took the plunge and founded Flowerbx, growing it to become the first global flower brand. Working with and shopping from luxury brands online, she observed that everything was branded except for flowers, as she will talk about in this episode. And this became her mission, to deliver fresh, quality flowers with the same consistent service as any top luxury brand. And I can tell you, the flowers that I ordered to beautify our video interview are incredible. At the time of this recording, which is nearly 9 days later, the pink Avalanche roses are still going strong. We talked about Whitney's leadership journey. Did you know that she's actually from Dallas, Texas? About lacking confidence, but discovering that you might just be the best CEO of your company. We talked about what it's like to be a woman in business, her role models, and what she learned from Tom Ford. I resonated with her when she said that as a founder, your job is never done, and it's hard to switch off. She gave 3 pieces of advice she would give her younger self. Spoiler alert, fail fast, and rip that band-aid off. We talked about what would have saved her a lot of hassle had she known it earlier, the hardest thing about being a founder CEO, about hiring, and why cooking, dancing, and shelling peas are essential. What I learned about Whitney is how determined, headstrong, and laser-focused she is on her mission, how this is only the beginning for her, her drive to perfection. Well, listen to the full episode, number 8, and discover it for yourself. So, Whitney, thank you so much for coming on the Anatomy of a Leader show, and welcome to my home studio. Really wonderful to see you. It's actually funny to see you in person because all of last year, we were doing all of these kind of like live Zoom conversations, and we did the one on brand storytelling. But today I'd love to focus on your story, on your leadership journey, and how you got to where you are today, the lessons that you've learned, mistakes. I love to talk about failure, just to get to know you today. So, on the show, we really dissect what leadership means and like what qualities a leader has. So I guess I'll just jump straight into it. Like, what does leadership mean to you?
Wow. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's so great to be here. And it's funny because I feel like I know you. While it is the first time we're meeting face to face throughout lockdown, I do feel like I've gotten to know certain people, and you're one of them, just by watching you engage with people on social media and on your site and everything. So it's great to meet you in person.
Thank you.
And I obviously love your flowers. So, what is being a leader? I think being a leader is having a strong vision. I think it's building a really strong team around you and being confident in them and letting them do what they do best and not micromanaging. I think it's also bringing people along on your vision. So it's great to have a vision, but to get everyone on board, which is one of the biggest challenges, to understand exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, and everyone pulling in the same direction. And when that happens, which actually right now at Flowerbx, it's happening and everything's humming, it is the best feeling in the world. And it's rare because there's, either a person who's not quite right or, a situation that's challenging. And it's really rare, those moments where you're like, this is it. We are all pulling in the same direction. We are really acting as a team. I think it's so defining that vision, bringing people on board with the vision, and then putting the right team in place are the sort of most critical parts of my job, I would say.
It's like that feeling when you get into the flow. That's such an amazing feeling to have, because as an entrepreneur, I mean, you're trying so hard to kind of make all of the pieces sort of sing to the same tune. And when that comes together, that's a really beautiful feeling. Was there a time, like a critical moment in time, when you realized, maybe even before you were, strictly kind of in a leadership position, it's like, I'm actually a leader? Was there such a moment for you?
Well, I really doubted myself as a leader, which I think is a very feminine and like female trait. And I was like, am I qualified to be a leader? I've never done this before. And actually no one's more qualified to lead this team with my vision than I am. So there was a period at the beginning of Flowerbx where I was like, I have to hire a CEO. And literally I interviewed dozens of people. And it occurred to me at a certain point, like, I can do this better than any of these people, even if they had more experience of being a CEO or they'd been to business school. No one can execute my vision better than I can. So I think, I had a lot of self-doubt, but with, every little success comes a little bit more confidence. Obviously, with every failure comes a little bit less confidence. So it's a roller coaster.
No, I love what you're saying. It's like, as women, we don't necessarily start off with that confidence of just, kind of being visible and taking that position of kind of leadership and charge, and through just kind of going for it and, as you said, a bit of kind of, trying things, that you got there. And that's incredible. I mean, in terms of, this is something that I'm also interested in, being a woman in business. Like, how do you feel about being a woman in business, and how do you feel being a woman has shaped you? I mean, I know, we don't ask these questions of men often, but I actually really want to know, because, I look up to, female role models, and I want to hear their perspective of what it's like.
Yes. Gosh, it's such a big question. I think one reason I'm very lucky is I'm surrounded by really great women. I have really great women investors. I have almost all amazing female team. There are a few really terrific guys, but I would say 90% of the company's women. So I feel I'm super empowered by the women that have supported me, and I feel it's my role to empower these younger women, a lot of them in their 20s, and show them that role model. Because to be honest, I didn't have that role model when I was growing up. I had either like women like Margaret Thatcher, or just sort of female leaders that were scary, terrifying, not anything I was ever going to be like. I didn't have someone that was like me that had become a huge success. And I think if you can't see it, you can't be it. So it's really important, there was Natalie Massenet who started Net-a-Porter. I remember as a real sort of role model to me when I started. Chrissy Wheeler, who owns the White Company, and has basically taken a really simple idea and executed it perfectly. So it's so important for me to have these women in front of me that are moms, that are, really, that weren't necessarily business women and aren't necessarily, masters in accounting and business, but have had a great idea, executed it flawlessly, and stayed really true to their vision.
I think you're so spot on when you're talking about having female role models, and it's like if you can't see it, you can't be it, and it's like somebody paving the path. But I think what comes across to me when I'm speaking to female founders and female CEOs, there's always someone that they find throughout their life that maybe they're not like, oh, this is kind of like somebody you might not necessarily idolize, but there's certain elements that you can see. It's like, oh yes, I can kind of model this element, or I can model this element, but they still manage to find other role models. But I'm curious to go back a little bit in time, because I actually don't know too much about you, and I've just recently learned that are you originally from Texas?
I'm from Dallas. Yes.
Yes, I've never been there. A really good friend of mine is actually moving there, and I'd love to go and visit. But like, what was it like growing up for you?
I always wanted to sort of get out. I remember going to New York when I was about 11 and just being like, wow, this is exciting. Dallas to me felt like quite provincial, even though I had a perfect, great family, great supportive parents. I just sort of always wanted more. I felt like, and I still feel that way. I think there are people that are always like, what else is there? What else is there? Not in a way that I'm dissatisfied with what I have at all, because I could never have one more thing in my life and be completely the luckiest woman in the planet. But I do feel like, what next? What next? Everyone's like, aren't you happy you've achieved success at Flowerbx? I'm like, I'm not even close to achieving success at Flowerbx. So I think I was always very driven growing up. Driven and sort of competitive, and I just wanted to do better and be better. So I went to school in New York because that was as far away as my parents would sort of let me go. And also when I was like 12, I went with my mom to Paris, and we went to Paris and London. It was a very sort of American go abroad, and we went to all the sort of capitals. And I was just like, I just thought the people were so sophisticated, and I loved the history, and I loved the architecture, and I loved how everyone dressed, and I loved everything. I just like, I belong in Europe. And I had read that Jackie Kennedy moved to Paris when she graduated from university and worked at French Vogue. I was like, that is it. I'm going to graduate from university. I'm going to study French literature and go and work at French Vogue. And I was just going to be like Jackie Kennedy. So that was the plan. But, I had a great childhood. I had parents who believed in me and supported me and just thought I was great.
I think that certainly helps. I think one of the common themes that I pick up on is the early experience of travel. I know there's, various people that we had on the show as well, when it was that pivotal moment of seeing another world and how other people live. And it was very similar for me as well, when I was always saying to you just earlier, like growing up in Siberia, and then my mom kind of remarried, and then we were traveling all of a sudden everywhere, and just like opening up your mind to possibilities. So this idea of travel is really key, I think, when you've had that kind of moment of just seeing another place. But I'd like to kind of talk about more, in terms of, hold on, this is where I start messing up. But I'd like to talk about your journey to founding Flowerbx. You spent 18 years with Tom Ford.
I did.
And what was that like? What was that like to work there?
It was great, obviously, because I worked there for 18 years. It was a dream job, and Tom's got a really great ability of letting you grow. Like, he loves celebrating talent, he loves rewarding talent, and he loves keeping talent, which is a really great quality, I think, that I hope to have as a leader, is like, you recognize someone terrific, let them grow. And if they keep growing, then they're going to be super happy for a long time. And also, I was with him at Gucci, then he acquired Stella McCartney, Alexander McQueen, all of these brands. So that was really exciting, and I was learning about that whole side of the business. Then he left and started Tom Ford with just an eyewear brand and a beauty brand. So literally from a sheet of paper, I watched him build that brand and helped him and sort of was a part of that. So I was still learning, and I think as long as you're still learning, like, you're super happy. So it was the best job ever, and I could have happily stayed there for the rest of my life. Do you know what I mean? There wasn't a part of me that was like, ugh, I hate my job. I just knew there was something more. Like, back to what I was saying earlier, I was like, is this it? Like, is this it? And I knew that sort of I wanted more from me and from my family than to work for someone else for the rest of my life.
So what prompted you to start Flowerbx? I mean, what was the decision for you? I mean, is it something that you've always thought about, or did you spot a moment in time? Like, how did that come about?
So, I mean, it's sort of twofold. As a working mom at that point, I was buying everything in my life online, as I'm sure you are. I was buying my clothes online. I was buying, even pre-COVID, I was buying my beauty online. I was buying my groceries online. I was buying everything in my life online. However, if I wanted to buy flowers, and I didn't want to buy a bouquet of flowers, I didn't want an arrangement. I wanted to buy 20 pale pink roses for a side table because I was having friends over for dinner. There was no way to do that. And I didn't want to go to a florist and spend like 5 times too much for the, simple 5 hydrangea or 20 roses. So that was one side of it. Also, working in fashion, I realized that everything's been branded. Like you have a brand of tea, a brand of macaroons. Everything's been branded. But flowers, really annoyingly, there was no consistent brand of flowers. So if you go to La Durée, for example, in London, in Paris, in New York, you're getting the same consistency of experience. Same with Gucci, same with Prada. You're getting the same tissue paper, the same wrapping paper, the same ribbon, the same store staff wearing the same uniform, probably the same fragrance, the same eyewear. So there was this like sort of lack of consistency with floral gifting that I found really disturbing. She would send flowers and you're like, oh, they look so pretty on the website. And then you see them and you're like, this is not what I sent at all. And that was pretty much a universal experience. So I'm like, what if we create a really extraordinary, beautiful experience where it's consistent, you know what you're getting, you know what you're sending, the person sends you a picture, you're like, yes, that is exactly what I wanted to send, and they're getting this sort of slick branded experience, and you're buying into the magic of this global brand. So that was what those sort of two facets of it, plus I was turning 40, plus I was pregnant with my third child. It was one of those like perfect storm moments where I'm like, I'm either gonna do this or I'm never going to do this. So it was, I think, a confluence of multiple events that just made me sort of jump off the cliff.
Like the perfect storm.
It really was.
I was reading somewhere where the age when people start a company or start running a marathon or, kind of any kind of major milestones tend to be at like age 29, 39, 49. So these like just before you reach a particular, kind of like a decade of your life. And I found that fascinating. There's this kind of idea of, a time and, starting something. But then obviously other elements are involved there as well. And like having, going from that process of, thinking about the business and thinking about the gap. I mean, what, would you have done it? Is this what you imagined it to be, like where you are now? Is this how you thought it would be?
I don't know what I thought, but I certainly was not anticipating any of this. Right. I think like the amount of tireless hard work all of the time, all day, every day, all weekend, all night. It's like the hustle all of the time is very real. And I knew it would be hard work, and everyone's like, oh, it's going to be hard work. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm used to hard work. I love
what hard work looks like.
I love to work hard. I've always wanted to work hard. I'm a hard worker, but like the relentlessness of it, because the thing is you're never done. And when it's your own company, as you know, it's not like you're like, okay, I finished that task. Now I'm going to give myself a break, because you're like, what's next? What am I going to, because you have to keep going. And that sort of drive, I've never, I previously could go on holiday and I'm like, okay, that's great. I'm taking a little time off. Now it's like, what next? What are we thinking about? Have we thought about Christmas? Have we thought about holiday? Have we thought about what new things are we doing? Because it takes constant, and the energy, the team's got amazing energy, but the energy ultimately comes from me, and the ideas or the, what if we think about this, ultimately comes from me. So it's like, it's just endless.
I find that's the hardest thing though, isn't it? Knowing when to stop or not ever kind of taking a mental break. I mean, how do you handle that? I mean, do you just sort of push through it? How do you handle it? It's like the non-stop.
Well, I do also love it. I mean, I do. I'm really driven by it, and I'm driven by success, and I'm driven by when things work, and that really excites me. So it's sort of my husband's like, you wouldn't want it any other way, and I wouldn't. That said, I think kids really help you. You have to switch off. I have to bathe them, and I have to put them to bed, and I have to read the story. And there are those, they really help you sort of with that, being in the moment. We also are lucky. We have a place in the Cotswolds. So every Friday, non-negotiable, we go to the Cotswolds. I'm with my family. And even if I'm working when they're asleep or whatever, we are spending that, really sort of invaluable time together. We're cooking together, we're shelling peas together, we're, dancing in the kitchen together. So I think having something, whatever it is, that's just non-negotiable. You're like, this time work is not coming into this. So I think you have to just set some barriers, which I'm not excellent at, but I think it's essential.
Did that happen when your kids came along, or is it something that you thought, actually, I need to implement it? Did it happen by accident? Like how?
No, it's a very, very conscious thing. And it's like I can have my best friend who's having her biggest party on Saturday night. I'm like, no, I just have to draw lines, because if you don't draw lines, and literally it's like, oh, but there's this on Sunday and there's this kid's birthday party and then there's this, and then all of a sudden you're running around all weekend too.
I find, as I said to you, I find that that's the hardest thing. And you're right, kids kind of make you naturally kind of stop, because you have to. It's not even that you have to kind of bathe them and brush their teeth, but if you're not in that kind of calm frame of mind, they're not in a calm frame of mind. And, I found that actually taking a break in between working and being with them actually make, even if it's like, 20 minutes or something, just to kind of get your head together, not going straight from, especially now that we're doing a lot of work from home, just kind of having that moment to like reset and kind of go, spend a little bit of a moment to yourself before facing them made a huge difference. Don't always have the time to do it, but it's something that I know consciously in my mind that makes a difference. But any other kind of habits that you feel that have helped you in kind of running your business, being the CEO, the founder of your business, any kind of habits that you kind of like, this is, the top thing that keeps me on top of everything?
I think having a great partner, and having a great team. I think having a great team at home and at work, of people that you can count on, of people who have your back, of people where you're like, this is the end of the world. And they're like, no, this is not the end of the world. And I have, the best wingman at work, and I've got the best wingman at home, that like, you're not, I feel like that sort of protects you from, that's key. And I also have the best nanny. She's been our nanny for 13 years, since my first one was born. And having that sort of, the people that you can rely on and that have your back, both at home and at work, are key.
Yeah. I think just the support, it makes a huge difference to everything.
And to your confidence, and your fearlessness at facing things that are really terrifying. If you have a great team, then, or a great partner at home, that it's going to be okay.
Yeah. I think this part of it is psychological safety, isn't it? That you always know that like mentally you're okay. Like you've got your support. That makes definitely a huge difference. And looking back to, for everything that you've achieved, what do you feel most proud of?
My family, for sure. Like having happy, well-adjusted, polite kids, and a great husband. So that for sure. I mean, no matter what, and I think I have that in my brain, is even if Flowerbx completely failed, I'll be fine. Like my life, I feel like, is a success because I have this amazing family. So I think having that as my barometer for happiness and success is pretty key for me.
Yeah. I think it's so important I think a lot of the times when I see, people who are moving through their careers, whether they're in, in employment or they're running their own business, and then they get to a certain point and they're like, what have I been doing with my life? Like, when your identity is so tied in with your job or your business that you can't possibly extricate yourself from it. And that's when you have, a lot of, that kind of midlife crisis, so to speak, where you're like, well, what have I been doing with my life up until this point? But looking back also, what is the one thing that you think would have saved you, had you known it then, that would have saved you a lot of hassle now?
One thing. Oh my God, there's so many things. But I think
3 things.
I think the advice, like, fail fast, is the best advice I would give my former self, because I think at the beginning I was always trying to make things work, make people work that weren't right, make a situation work because I'd said I was going to do it that wasn't right. And I think even 6 months, 8 months later, I still knew it wasn't right. And I thought things were going to sort themselves out either with an employee that wasn't right I'm just like, rip the Band-Aid off. If it's not right now, it's not going to be right in 6 months. And you're going to waste time and you're going to waste money and you're going to waste resource. And our resources are so limited anyway. Just fail fast, rip the Band-Aid off, move on. It's not a personal failure if it wasn't the right fit, if I hired the wrong person. It's just life. Same with if I make a mistake in business. It's like, it didn't work, fine, move on, get rid of it, stop. And I think I was embarrassed sort of before to be like, oh, maybe that wasn't the right idea. Now it's fine. We're all going to make mistakes. Hire people who are smarter than you. Really just, I think I didn't know that, how important it was to hire people that were really experts at what they do, that maybe weren't even like me at all. And that's been a really great learning because, our entire senior leadership team now is nothing like me. They come from no background like they're not from flowers. They're not from beauty. They're not from luxury. They're not, and they're so laser smart. They're so operationally amazing. They're so good at things I'm not good at. So I think don't be afraid to hire people that are different than you are. That's how you're going to get a sort of really well-rounded and excellent senior management team.
And was there a moment when you've realized that? Was there a specific moment when you're like, oh, actually, I need to do this?
Well, it wasn't even a specific moment. The thing is, I couldn't hire great people because I was in like a warehouse in Acton being like, this is going to be a really big thing. And people are like, okay, lady. I was like pregnant, it's going to be a global flower business. They're like, right. Sure. So I think until I started building and sort of delivering on what I said I was going to do, it was hard to get people to believe me. Also, I didn't have money as far as like, you need to pay people certain salaries to get excellent people. So it's really hard when you're starting out because you have this great idea, but you can't hire excellent people to help you execute it. Now I'm lucky that I have been able to hire excellent people. So I think it's a question of doing the best you can with the resource you have available. And then as soon as you have more resource, doing better.
What would you say is the hardest thing about hiring people into your business?
The hardest thing, I think, back to what I just said, it's probably like to get them to believe the potential and believe the hype. So a lot of the people that are, we're hiring right now for director of customer growth, and these like growth hackers that are really excellent at growth. There are people that take a company from 20 million to 150 million in a year. And they're like, yeah, I'm not sure I'm buying that. So I think it's getting people on board with the dream. It's probably the biggest challenge, and convincing them, because half of the time they're interviewing you. Right now, I find with these really excellent candidates that have really great experience and the experience we need in D2C, in startup, in taking companies, super high, fast growth companies, they are really interviewing you. They're like, do you have what it takes? So I think it's, that's probably the biggest challenge right now.
I think just going back to what you were saying about, hiring people who are smarter than you, that are better than you, and then having, and then, these people will be interviewing you back. I mean,
they really are. And it took me aback at the beginning because I'm like, wait, you're the one that, but you realize you want them as much as, if not more, than they, some of them want you, which is an interesting sort of paradigm shift, to try to convince people that they want to come work for you.
I think that's the transition between, hiring kind of more junior people versus when you're actually building your senior leadership team.
Totally.
And what's the hardest thing about being a CEO?
I think it's what I said earlier about being a leader. It's getting people on board with your vision and keeping the energy and the excitement and providing that vision, and to keep driving it forward sort of tirelessly, because you're never done. Yeah. So to keep that energy, to keep ideas, to keep the team excited and motivated. And especially, over the past year where I'm like, both at home and at work, you're like, everything's going to be okay. But you're like, I have no idea if this is going to be okay. Do you know what I mean? No one, you'd speak to the biggest economist in the entire world and no one could have told you if anything was going to be okay. Yeah. But here I am trying to convince the team to forge ahead, to work really hard, to be as committed. Like, we're going to get through this. We're going to crush this. And at home too, telling the kids, like, don't worry, we're going to get through this. And meanwhile, you're not allowed to have any moments that are like wavering or wondering, who's telling me it's going to be okay? No one.
Yeah. It's just having that belief and kind of, keeping the energy and, everything up. And I think that's really tough when you when, in reality, we don't know what the future holds. I mean, with the pandemic, obviously, it's just, basically has broken down all of our structure and our habits and, everything that we were used to. All of a sudden, everything has changed. And I think for humans, psychologically, this idea of like not having that stability is extremely difficult because it brings lots of, actually quite a lot of anxiety and fear that's not really necessarily founded in reality, because nothing's really predictable anyway. But when we're faced with that, then that's really tough. And I think you're right about, being a leader and, kind of taking a company. It's like providing that, security and safety of like, it's going to happen. Everything is under control. And, doing that is really, really hard. And I mean, one of the things I like to talk about, which might sound a bit strange, is failure and kind of mistakes. I mean, can you talk about a time when like you failed and what happened and how you handled that?
Yeah, I mean, failure with hiring the wrong people. And it does feel like a personal failure. It feels like a failure if you can't get the best out of someone. It also feels like a failure when you have to let someone go, or they quit. That makes you feel terrible. It's a terrible feeling. It's terrible to the team. That always to me feels like a failure, is not getting it right, with a hire. Failure. I mean, we opened a hub in Paris, like really, really hopeful and excited that the Paris sort of B2B business would pick up the way the French B2B business would pick up the way the UK business had. It didn't. It's fine. Move on. But it was like for a while I kept trying to make it work. And then finally COVID allowed me to just be like, you know what, this isn't working. It's a suck on resources. It's a suck on time. It's a suck on money. And French people, they want to go to the fleuriste like on the corner and buy their little fleur, and that's fine. So they can do that. And then it actually gave me great sort of satisfaction because Arnaud Massenet, who's Natalie's ex-husband, said, oh yeah, like the French, and he's French, he's like, the French were the last people to get on board with Net-a-Porter. He's like, they're followers, not leaders. They'll come along, but like they'll come after the US is a big success and after, we're a global success. So I was like, okay, fine. But that felt like a failure. I think COVID though allowed for a lot of businesses for people to just be like, okay, all the things that weren't working, let's just get rid of them. Which was a nice opportunity to clean slate with people, with parts of the business that weren't working. It was a great excuse to be like, okay, now's the time.
It's like, not a clean slate per se, but I think this is a moment when you're like, I think it's the same for me. It's like when you just realize that actually a lot of things they're just sort of hanging there.
Yeah.
They're hanging there. They're not really going anywhere, but because you just think, okay, it'll happen. But here you have to be extremely decisive. You have to say, this is not working, or I simply don't have the time to do it. And I have to just reprioritize and just like let it go.
Yeah. Like a cull, just a cull of everything that wasn't right.
Yeah. And so what's next for you? I mean, whether it's Flowerbx or anything else, like what's next for you? What's in the challenge that you're kind of excited about going forward?
So we're closing, hopefully, our Series A funding round like imminently, and then U.S. expansion, like really full coverage in the U.S. and to really drive growth in the U.S. I think there's an enormous opportunity. There's such exciting early traction. Like they get it, the brand has landed, the people are responding to it. So it's just going and really driving that growth in the U.S. is, I think, going to keep my hands full for the next few years.
For sure. And what seems impossible, and this is a question I'm stealing from Mark Goulston, who is one of my favorite people, and I'm having a conversation with him later this week. He's a coach who works with Fortune 500 CEOs, and he says, what seems impossible to you now, but if you can achieve it, will change the course of your business?
That's such a good question. I don't know. I don't really think things seem impossible. Maybe that's like probably a strength and a weakness of mine. I just sort of think anything's possible. So I do believe it's possible if I have the resource to execute it. So I don't know. I can't think of anything that's impossible.
And what 3 things would you give as advice to either your younger self or somebody embarking and doing what you're doing?
I think feel the fear and do it anyway is like just it's terrifying. Everything about it's terrifying, but I think it's like a muscle and you exercise it and then it feels really good and it gets stronger. So fear is like that for me, and the more you dive into your fear, the more you're like, okay, that wasn't that bad. So I think if you're not scared, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. I think also you're better than you think you are. I think we always like just don't think we're that great and we doubt ourselves. So, and what I would love to tell my younger self, because was riddled with insecurity. I didn't think I was great at all. And it was like, I was great. So I think I would love to tell, I think young girls especially, it's like you have so much potential and you're so amazing. And I think young women just don't, they doubt themselves so much. What other advice would I give my younger self? I think just to have fun with it. Like have a sense of humor, because like really shit happens all the time. And if you can't laugh at it and you don't have a partner you can laugh with, and I've teammates I can laugh with, and we laugh. I mean, even the most abysmal moments. And I think having a certain humor about all of it, because at the end of the day, what matters is your family. What matters is your health. And, the rest,
it's like know what your priorities are and focus on on how you are as a human being as well, because it's like business is great, and you're striving, you're pushing yourself, but at the end of the day there's also life, and you have to enjoy it. And I think that's a really important lesson. I think especially like when we're kind of first starting out, and this idea of just like pushing, grinding, and just like getting somewhere. And it can actually feel enjoyable for quite a lot of the times. But I think when it becomes when the stress becomes too chronic, I think that's when it becomes a problem, because then you can't bring your full self to be, that person, the vision holder, the person who says we can do it. Like you need to also re-energize yourself, I think, through all of that. Well, Whitney, thank you so much for coming onto the show and for talking with me. It's fascinating to hear of your story and your lessons and just getting your insights. And I really appreciate, and really wonderful to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me. And you've actually made me think about things I haven't thought about before, which is always a good interview. So thanks so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Whitney. Thank you so much for joining us here on Anatomy of a Leader. I hope our guest leadership journeys resonate with you and make you feel like you too can take on the world. Please subscribe so you can be alerted when new episodes are released. Comment, like, tell a friend, share on social media. I'll make sure to support you there as well. And let me know what inspired you, the changes that you've made, and how you too succeeded against all odds. You can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn with the handle MariaHVO, or just search for my very long surname. And if you're hiring leaders to take your business to the next level, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Again, that long surname. Thank you again for being here on Anatomy of a Leader. Bye for now.